Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome, and thank you so very much for being here with us. It is an honor, privilege, and pleasure. We're in for a delightful 30 minutes or thereabouts, depending upon your questions. This is for you, really casual, relaxed, fun. We call it Which Session because in my one-on-one appointments, often I get this sense of which session out of the 100 programs would actually be really useful. So it takes me listening to someone's stories and what they're actually genuinely struggling with or what they wish they could really master. I should probably preface this by saying, I created the very first Positive Prime session for myself and then thought, wow, because of the results, I shared it with some of my private clients and they were like, wow. And then, of course, I thought, how on earth do we create a platform that shares it more widely with a global audience? So it was a little bit of a, let's take some baby steps. I was talking to a lovely lady who I met 10 years ago in Minneapolis. I was actually staying with Dr. Paul Shealy. And if you don't know Paraliminals or Learning Strategies Corporation, you should definitely go check out Dr. Paul Shealy. And Shealy Learning is his company now. His doctorate is in leadership. Anyway, thank you, Angel, for saying it is wow. Yeah, it is wow, right? I had read Wallace D. Wattles' The Science of Getting Rich, and I was frustrated with myself because I desperately wanted to experience time freedom and financial freedom. And, 10 years ago, that was not actually even looking like a possibility for me, right? I was disappointed with myself. I even had like these self-esteem issues that I didn't really identify or label them as such, but I felt like I wasn't good enough. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't disciplined enough. I didn't have enough willpower. I could go on and on and on and on. And one of the things that I knew from the content was this statement that's made in The Science of Getting Rich that says the hardest work in the world is to think the thoughts you want to think. To be so incredibly emotionally, mentally disciplined that you think the thoughts that you want to think that then could actually generate this cascade that is about how you're feeling. And then, of course, we know that vibration and frequency and generally how we show up in the world and how we be is what attracts to us more opportunities. The truth is people actually prefer to spend time with those of us who are joyful and cheerful and excited, exuberant, graceful, encouraging. Isn't that just the truth? It is, right? If we aren't being that, we actually really don't like spending time with ourselves. And so I created Positive Prime so that I could like me. And so I could be really comfortable and calm and feel this serenity and peacefulness and this harmony just being on my own. And I knew that I had to love myself so much and be the vibration of love before I could attract the love of my life. So there was a gazillion things going on in my mind. But I couldn't think the thoughts I wanted to think because I get distracted and my attention would be hijacked. So I created this intervention that literally forced me to, on a slower speed, say out loud the incantations, as Tony Robbins would call them, or the mantras, as Dana Wilde would call them. But it forced me to actually start repeating affirmations if there were questions. Like Anthony Robbins does a whole piece on ask yourself really good quality questions, and your brain will go off in search of answers for really good quality responses to more empowering questions. For example, why do I always get it so wrong? I guarantee you, your beautiful mind is going to gather enough evidence to prove to you conclusively why you get it wrong. Because that's what it does naturally and organically and magnificently. Ask a better quality question. I know Noah St. John's made his whole life about these questions, affirmations. How did I get it so right? And your brain will go off in search for an equal amount of proof for you about how it is that you got it right. So then you actually stack these beliefs, right? So I created the very first one so that I could interrupt my own patterns. It was an intervention on me. And it made me focus on all that is really surprising in my life, all that thrills me, all that gives me hope. And I know for a fact that internalizing the content is where beingness comes from. So let me just explain to you a little bit, right? So a lot of us in the personal development, self-improvement, human potential, peak performance world, those of us who are striving for excellence, or we want to be more successful, and we want to enable others to do so, so we want to coach them and mentor them and support them and, uplift them. The interesting thing is that often what we are seeing and what we are sharing in some cases is more projection than anything else. It's a bit like we will find fault everywhere outside of ourselves so that we can justify not looking at the fault within ourselves, because that's actually really uncomfortable. And we kind of don't want to do this shadow work. And so back to this lovely lady, Vonda, who I was speaking to when I was only yesterday or the day before. And I haven't literally had a one-on-one conversation with her since I was with her 10 years ago in Minneapolis. And I showed her my very first positive prime session, this thing, because I'd showed Dr. Paul Shealy. And I was saying to her, if he hadn't have said to me, and he was one of the founders of the Transformational Leadership Council, if he hadn't have actually just, remarked, Kim, in my 30 years, I have never seen anything like this. You're not a neuroscientist. You're not a psychologist. You're not how did you come up with this? And it wasn't like he was being gentle. He was actually really challenging me, because he was trying to figure out whether I was a charlatan or had I stolen all of the good ideas from someone else. Like, he literally was trying to uncover the truth, because he couldn't fathom how this beautiful, young, bright thing called Kim Serafini could actually even conceive something like that. But guess what? It wasn't me. It was divinely channeled. It was because I'd spent years in the spa industry training Ayurvedic doctors. It's because I'd spent years training all sorts of other therapists throughout Asia. It was because I was already a change management consultant. It was because I was passionate and doing deep dives around the Science of Getting Rich from Wallace D. Wattles, or Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. I'd already done all of Anthony Robbins, like Date with Destiny. For those of you who haven't seen the documentary with Tony on Netflix, it is so absolutely what I went through, more than 10 years ago. And then, so the point is that all of these pieces of the mosaic, and we all know Paddy Crummer is very famous for the mosaic effect, all these pieces were actually coming together to create this masterpiece, this creative and artistic masterpiece that is Positive Prime. And it has all of the ingredients. The formula and the algorithm literally makes you brighter, as in intellectually smarter. Your brain functions differently. Your mind and your thinking operates at optimal levels when you are positively primed. It only takes 3 minutes. And you can plant seeds in the other than consciousness out there, kind of in the matrix, like in the other multiverses, if you're into quantum physics. You can do that with elegance and certainty if you personalize the sessions. So a lot of us will go and actually consume great content, right? It doesn't become who you're being. It doesn't just ooze out of you. It's not just what your cells are vibrating at, unless it is you and it's your identity. So you actually need to identify with content in order to be able to apply it efficiently and effectively. Your brain, from a neuroscience, positive psychology, and change management perspective, does that when you have internalized, and it requires personalizing to be able to do that like that. And so if you have a piece of content, let's absolute abundance is a beautiful session. It helps us all to feel really rich. I want you to think about right now, your blood cells, what are they rich with? Hemoglobin? What is the circulation of your blood? What is that makes you feel rich? When you think about how deep and velvety and pure, healthy blood is there a richness to that red? I need to see some nods if that's the truth. There's some richness to that red. Yeah. So if you can feel how rich your blood is, you have this, it's almost like a glimpse. You have this tiny little, I want you to imagine like a fireworks on New Year's Eve. You have this like spark, and you have this ability to attach to and to vibrate at and to be of the frequency of richness just with that tiny little exercise. So the absolute abundance session helps you to identify all around you and your life's experience how blessed, how fortunate, how rich you really are, the abundance that is already there. Because when you can actually just allow yourself this openness to recognize the abundance, you become the magnet for abundance. You've got to feel abundant though, because no intellectualizing is ever going to get you there. And I'm a really cerebral kind of human being, and I'm smart, and so I spend a lot of time in my head. It took me years of working with energy healers and spiritual healers and other forms of the mystical arts and alternatives in order for me to really anchor myself and ground myself and connect my heart with my head, right? But I can overthink things super easily, even to this day. I'm much better at dropping down and feeling, but feeling is what is necessary. Identifying, having it bubble up from within you, because it is you. And when you're the beingness of abundance, you just do attract abundance. It's just so much easier, right? It's just seriously so much easier. So I hope that's been helpful as a little bit of a, I don't know what we call these things. So the reality is that sometimes it's difficult for us to be that. And so we have to actually use a tool like Positive Prime that accesses the other than consciousness in order for us to plant seeds and allow them to sprout. And then we've got to fertilize them and nurture them, water them, give them sunshine, give them time and space so that, you know, the acorn becomes the oak tree, so that the manifestation arrives in divine timing, okay? Now, I cannot emphasize more energetically, you owe it to yourself. Your life is important enough, and so are you, to just spend a little bit of time and effort to go through the process of curating your own photographs within Google Images of the experiences that you desire, the people that you would love to meet and have a conversation with. the people that you want to be in the presence of just because it makes you feel happier, or it inspires you, or the places that you want to go to. The pieces of art, go Google the Mona Lisa if you'd actually like to be in the presence of that particular painting. I've been there, I've done that. It was really disappointing, kind of let me down. I was like, oh. And then I went back, a different person about a year later, and I was like, wow. How come I didn't see that before? Sometimes it's us that needs to have transformed before we can actually decipher the real beauty, right? Sometimes we do actually need to look at something again a little later after we have actually done some growing and some improving and some cultivating and some kind of work in ourselves. What happens with Positive Prime is that all of these courses that you may have done, whether they're you go into a great sales course because you realize that in business you absolutely must master being persuasive and compelling and transferring enthusiasm and being authentic and being morally responsible and so forth. And so you might know all of that, but knowing all of that and being all of that, sometimes the connections just haven't been woven and they haven't had the time to really cement in order for that to be how you show up, right? So I want you to go and personalize more of the sessions. Definitely. It'll allow you to internalize. It'll allow you to more be. It'll allow it to start to ooze out of you. Give it time. Repetition absolutely is the mother of skill. We all know that. And then allow yourself to surrender and be really soft whilst you're watching a Positive Prime session, because it is the entirety. It's the certain number of Duchenne smiles. It's the certain number of spectacular sunrises and sunsets that actually activate various ways that our body produces hormones that are related to the way that we process awe-inspiring landscapes and sceneries. There's a certain number of green tree canopy images, because we know from the research from the University of California in San Francisco that a really great reaction for a cytokine storm, that protein is impacted in a really helpful way by green tree canopy. And some of us think, oh, do we have to go and forest bathe? Do we actually have to walk in nature in order to get that change in our biochemistry? And the answer is no. But you must look at a certain number of photographs that actually where the photograph, more than 70% of it is green tree leaves, right? So all of what you need is actually in the formula that makes it work, that positively primes you scientifically within 3 minutes. And the effect does last 6 to 8 hours, right? All of you may not know this, but the whole body of, positive priming as a scientific research area means that we know that you could actually change the biochemistry of your brain and have it function so that it makes more accurate decisions faster, so that you're more resourceful, so you're more likely to think outside of the box, so that you actually are more creative. We know that a positively primed brain can actually be produced by eating a slice of apple pie, because sugar can actually give you this high. But it would not be morally responsible for us to go around telling everybody to consume more sugar in order to be positively primed. And what's more to the point, you actually get a spike and then you get an immediate drop. And the effect kicks in within about 15 minutes. And it literally only lasts about 30 minutes. And the down is actually further down than you were before. So we know all of that, right? So when Sean Acor and his colleagues actually went and did the efficacy research into positive prime, and they said, wow, do you know that you have this trailing effect where the brain is still positively primed 6 to 8 hours later? In science, that's like a long-term effect. It's like the holy grail to have an intervention with a long-term effect. But it's only 6 to 8 hours. So you're better off watching a couple of sessions every 6 to 8 hours, right? I watch a few throughout the day. there is this compounding effect that we'd like to do some clinical research on about what actually happens when you watch 3 sessions for at least 15 minutes each, and you do that over the space of 3, times or intervals during the day. It'd be really interesting for us to know that. We have a suspicion that it actually does produce a more intense effect. We don't think it lasts longer. We think we still have to watch 3 more sessions, 8 hours later. Alrighty, so.
So Kim, we've got some really good questions.
Awesome. Do you want to start answering them?
No, I want you to answer them. But I'm going to tell you what they are, because it's really hard to read and talk and manage 25 guests at the same time. So I'm your compadre here. So
awesome.
The first one is about trust, from Kim. I notice when I take a big risk, I start second guessing my decision and begin to distrust myself and everyone involved. So I guess that relates to how Positive Prime could support that issue of trust.
That is such, isn't that awesome? Patty, have you ever been in the same boat? Because I have.
Yes.
Who else is in the same boat? Nod if you can. I'm just going to go and have a look. Yeah?
Nodding.
All righty. I'm glad there are others of you who can identify. Interestingly enough, I actually do wonder whether advertising agencies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s did use subliminal practices, which I'm totally 1000% against, to actually cause generally anybody who watches TV or was exposed to magazines this questioning within ourselves. Because I remember at business school, when I learned about the 4 Ps in marketing classes, there was this component of the strategy, which was oh so clever, about how everybody has buyer's remorse, and if you are Ford Motor Car Company or Toyota Motor Car Company, etc., you actually had an entire program in after sales service to try to get people to just be calm about this decision that they'd made, and buyer's remorse was recognized. Everybody understood and appreciated it as they studied it, and then they poured enormous amounts of expertise and enormous amounts of research and money into, and so how do we actually address that, right? So I think the trust issue might actually be about our reptilian brain, and it might be about our survival instinct at its core. There are other aspects to it in the modern day life that I think I could definitely help you with a few comments, right? So first of all, acknowledge. Patty, everybody else in the community, if you've seen lots of my coaching, you've seen the very first thing to do is actually wrap your arms around it and say thank you, 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 to that feeling. Acknowledging it is like, it comes from shadow work, but it's about shining a light so that the darkness disappears, and whatever we resist persists, because we were taught as babies that if we weren't paid attention for throwing the tantrum and screaming and ranting and raving and saying, hey, I need my nappy changed, hey, I need food, hey, I need water, right? What actually happened was we learned that when we jump up and down, we're actually somehow helping ourselves to get our needs met. And so a few of us didn't become mature enough because we didn't have great role models. We didn't have incredible parents or incredible aunts and uncles or incredible grandparents or incredible kindergarten or preschool teachers. We didn't have incredible role models on TV. The reality is that some of us, it's not our fault, right? It's this reptilian part of ourselves that is about survival. And so we learned that when we shake the tree, we actually get some attention that somehow gets our needs met. But usually, as we get a little bit older, there are more graceful ways to do that. There are more courteous ways to do that. And there are actually more mature ways to do that, right? And there are more reasonable and fair ways to do that, because that which you ask of others, you're actually asking of yourself. And a lot of people feel very uncomfortable in the other than consciousness. I'm talking super conscious, unconscious, and subconscious, as well as, it's not just all subconscious. And you all know this. I've been through, there's lots of other classes I've done on the other than consciousness, etc. But the reality is that sometimes we're finding that we need to actually perceive something that doesn't quite meet up to our expectations because we don't meet up to our own expectations. And the only way through that is love, right? That's about loving you and your idiosyncrasies and your imperfections. Oh, your humanness, your mistakes and your failures and your shortcomings. And looking for perfection is really interesting, because what it actually indicates is that often that person has been demanding of themselves perfection unnecessarily, and it's inappropriate and it's unacceptable. And the truth is that we are all perfect, even though some of us aren't as perfect if we compare ourselves to others. Like, I was talking to one of our beautiful community members yesterday, and he's visually impaired. And he really is on a mission to help us understand that we are all disabled. He'd actually like the word disabled to be removed from our lexicon language and the dictionary, because we're all disabled and we all disable ourselves. So if we tell ourselves, I don't have enough money for that, your disability is your lack of finances. You are just as disabled as somebody who is visually impaired. And this is very much his opinion. And he really is excited about creating positive prime sessions to help the entire world understand that they are gorgeous and amazing and exceptional and fantastic, and the world is their oyster, no matter what all of our disabilities are. And I love that. So he's visually impaired, but he's actually an elite athlete, like a world class, like #1 elite athlete, particularly in triathlons. And he can speed down a mountain on a bike at 60 kilometers an hour. He's Irish. And the crazy thing is, of course, he can't see. Imagine the courage. Well, actually, a lot of it is muscle memory, because he's trained just gently, softly, carefully, persistently, consistently, with other people who are his guides, with other people who are telling him, hey, you're doing well. Hey, you're doing well. Hey, you're doing well. Yeah, you're on track. Yes, you're on track. Yes, right? And then he can do something that maybe he would have convinced himself that wasn't possible. That's the opportunity for all of us, right? Hey, you're doing well, you're doing well, you're doing well. So trust is a little bit of a issue, and it's actually almost in the same category as perfectionism. Some of us have a difficult time trusting others because we have a difficult time trusting ourselves, because we make a commitment to ourselves and then we break it. It could be like, I'm not going to have an alcoholic beverage this afternoon. I'm not going to have my gin and tonic or my glass of white wine or my whatever, right? But then, without really being conscious, somehow I poured myself that glass of whatever and I'm drinking it. And I go, oh, I wasn't going to drink this afternoon. And those millions of tiny actions actually are the evidence or the beliefs stacking that I was talking about earlier that prove to you that actually you aren't trustworthy. If you feel untrustworthy, what do you attract to yourself? I mean, seriously, like, let's just think about that. You must keep your promises to yourself. It's really, really, really challenging. It's difficult stuff, right? It's work that I still do. So, which session should I watch if I want to build trust? You ready for it? Surrendering and letting go. All of us have trust issues. That's what I was trying to say before when I said, who's in the same boat? All of us have trust issues. All of us break our promises to ourselves at least a couple of times a day. I don't know. It's 1,000 things. You're in this relationship, you break up and you say to yourself, I'm not going to like phone that person. Oh, whoops, you phone that person because you can't control yourself, right? There's a billion examples. The only way through is loving it and going, oh, Kimbo, you know, acknowledge it. It's okay. So you're not trusting this, and this is what's showing up for you, and that's okay, because you're actually having your other than consciousness try to protect you. And so what's your job here? It's okay. Everything's okay. It's my responsibility to relax and just have a little bit of faith. And what else do I trust? And in previous coaching classes, I've actually talked about this. This is my easiest way to learn trust. Think about the sun rising in the east, and we always have this joke, it's a little bit southeast, and it's a little bit northeast, depending upon what time of the year it is. But anyway, generally east. The sun rises in the east for those of us at the moment in this lifetime. The sunrise, it might change. We might get a polarity shift or meteor might hit us. No, seriously, it's going to rise generally in the east for the entire time we're alive. That you can trust. Now get that feeling. Do you know that the sun rises in the east? Not if that's a yes for you. Do you know that the sun rises in the east? Feel that in your body. You know that, right? You know that, you know that, you know that, you know that. Now catapult that feeling and attach it to that which you are being distrustful about. All right? So we make associations. That's why there's this concept called reputations by association. We make associations by attaching. So make this like leapfrog and have this energy from this flow to that. And you actually literally, you lock them together in your consciousness, your other than consciousness, your subconscious, your unconscious, right? So you have to go to, it's a bit like, is my blood a rich red color? Yes. Is my blood rich? Yes. Is there richness within me? Yes. Am I rich? Yes. Sometimes some of these associations are a little bit of a stretch. Be gentle with yourself. Allow yourself to make the leap. What if you believe that? What if you believed that? What if you allowed that? What if you could just go with the flow? Okay, so that's the other session I would watch, Infinite Flow.
We got another question, which is about time management. And time management is a big bucket. So the details would be in everything, studying, client work, housework, business, family. How do you plan your day, stick to your schedule? How does positive pride fit with that?
Okay. All of you may have come across this, but not anchored it into who you're being. Do that which is important, not which that is urgent. But that requires you to do a little bit of an exercise where you actually really think about, what is it that I value? What's important to me? What do I think is substantial? How am I going to actually define for myself what my values are? It usually requires that you've thought about your vision for 100 years time, for 50 years time, for 25 years time, for 10 years time, for 5 years time, for 1 year's time, for 6 months time, for 1 month's time, right? It actually does take a little bit of mental and emotional work that should actually be quite joyful and fun, thinking about, okay, so what is my vision? And if that was my vision, who would I need to be? Who would I need to be in order to actually bring about that vision? And if I was to be that person, what would my values need to be? What would I actually need to think? What would I need to feel? What would I need to believe, right? What resources do you think that I would have to actually have around me or access to, avail myself of? What are my strengths? What are my gifts? What are my talents? And then, interestingly enough, once you get there, it's much easier to do that which is important, not that which is urgent and being required of you by other people. You become the kind of person who just does that which is important. Now, if it's important to you that you actually serve your clients and you actually exceed their expectations, what you do and how you're being will translate into your actions. So the session that I would watch is called Astonishing Actions. Why? Because I have discovered that most people do not achieve their goals because they do not follow through and they do not follow up. And first of all, they've actually got to take some action. They've got to be proactive. It's much easier when you are positively primed to take some action, right? So before you take actions, positively prime yourself. It doesn't really matter what session. You could watch Mark Romero's Healing and Harmony, right? You could watch Donna Harmony Jones. You could watch Dina Proctor's. You could watch like lots of different sessions. You could watch Dr. Kim Harvin's, right? So, you know, the interesting thing is that I literally went to watch her session the other day twice. And as you know, when something's brand new in the shop, you need to watch it through at least twice in order for the caching in Google Chrome to actually work. So I know Google's a big company and they've got thousands of software engineers, but like seriously, they're all only human, right? So when we come along with this outrageous intervention that literally pushes the boundaries and has 1,000 frames, right? And we actually want you to have this summary of the essence of a program. You're asking quite a lot of the software in order to have all of these frames or flashcards available to you. So sometimes you're going to see some black spots, right? Perfectly normal as you go through the first and the second viewing. By the third viewing, it started to actually calm down. If you have a setting in your computer that clears your cache every time you turn your computer off, no, you're in serious trouble, right? So some of the things that are actually built into the Google Chrome software programming is about the world having access, because every time you load a new web page, if you've never been there before, it actually has to load the whole thing, but then it basically caches. So the next time you go back to that page, most of the components are already in your memory. Our computers these days have that capacity, so we may as well leverage it, right? We may as well use it to our advantage. Well, that's what happens with the positive prime session. It's caching. And so if you totally, completely clear your caches, you have to re-watch all of your sessions at least 3 times in order for them to start to settle in. I don't know how else to explain it, but that's my layman's option for you. So I watched Your Soul Speaks for the first time. And I watched it on the maximum speed. I mean, I know that the standard runtime is 15 minutes. I could go in there and change it to 3 minutes, sure, and then press, play, let's go. But actually, I just leave it at 15 minutes. But once it starts playing, I literally speed it up and go to max and let it get all the way through once. And then, I do it again, speed it up, max. Oh, I just got myself credits because I watched it on fast. There's something quite amazing that does actually happen in pre-conscious processing when we watch something fast. And yes, it does bypass our conscious critical judgment factors, our prefrontal cortex. All of you have heard 1,000 times before, but for those of you who haven't, anything that is new and unfamiliar, everything that is new and unfamiliar, right? We from our reptilian brain reject it, resist it. We do the flight, fight, freeze because we have to, because it's the way we're wired from our reptilian brain. So our amygdala is slightly more alert. Anything that is new or unfamiliar, everything that is new and unfamiliar. So what actually happens in pre-conscious processing as we watch it all the way fast is that everything that's there that we may not have ever seen before, we may not have ever even considered before, or might not be our natural automatic ways of thinking and feeling and being, it goes to our other than consciousness, right? So then guess what? When we go to watch it on a slower speed, it is no longer a threat to us because we don't know how to process it. The reason why anything that was unfamiliar to us needed to be treated as a threat, of course, I'm sure you've all heard this a billion times before. When we were in the caveman days and there was a saber-toothed tiger or some other thing advancing towards us, we had to assume that which was unfamiliar was going to kill us in case it was going to kill us. And then once we became familiar with it and we realized, oh, that's a fluffy butterfly, right? Oh, no. No, that's not going to kill us. And then we relax around it. When we relax around it, what do? We allow it in, right? It's no longer a threat. We're not in flight, fighting, or freezing. So anyway, watch it for the third time. Well, that session, you know, sometimes when you just need to, the relief. That's how I felt. And then I watched it slowly a fourth time and I thought, wow, some of those statements are just not statements that are in my everyday repetitive thinking. And I've got 50,000 thoughts a day like you do. That's what we do. We have 50,000 thoughts a day. We know that those of us who don't have a lot of training in positive priming have about 50% of those thoughts be automatic negative thoughts. That's the way we've been wired, right? That's the way we've been wired. So surrender, let go, allow, just allow, be a little bit softer, a little bit more gentle. Realize that all of us are imperfect and yet wonderful. What else? Anything before we go? Barrett, would you please address the benefits of exercising whilst watching Positive Prime? I'm seriously considering buying a rebounder to jump on whilst watching the session. Go, Barrett, you're amazing. That's fantastic. Alrighty, so I did actually talk about this with our professional leaders, so those people who are going through certification, so I'll do a little truncated version. About 20 years ago, Tony Robbins made this comment on stage, I happened to be in the room, that dyslexic children who jump on a rebounder and then learn to spell actually have a better time of it. The outcomes are improved. They did some more research on that. I thought, So that's got to be something about the way that your brain releases or allows. It's got to be something about gravitational pull. So if I was to try and learn a new belief like I am rich and fabulous, or I am loving, loved and lovable, or I am okay, or I'm more than enough, that'd be like me being a child with special needs, maybe a grown-up, but there's still that little baby Kim inside of me, or that little girl Kim inside of me, or that terrible teenager Kim inside of me. Like that child, what would happen if I jumped on a rebounder whilst watching Positive Prime? Well, just as rebounding, there's lots of research around this. You can go off and spend hours on Google. About a minute of jumping on a rebounder, just kind of gently, don't go crazy. It's worth about 10 minutes of going for a little jog, right? So the way that everything in your body is working is really, it's accelerated and amplified. And the impatient Kim, she quite likes that idea, right? I'm like, yeah, 1 minute instead of 10, that's my kind of exercise, right? So then I heard that like 10 minutes is like an hour's running. And I was like, wow. There were some incredible exercise physiologists who actually worked with Anthony Robbins who kind of did this piece of research. So anyway, I, of course, bought a rebounder because Tony said it was a good idea. And anything that Tony said was a good idea, I did. See, Tony originally said create a vision board, so I did. Tony originally said incantations are the way to go. So I got into incantations. Tony has never actually said, hey, combine the lot and put it into a piece of software and make it a gratitude journal as well. No, that was up to me, right? So Tony said, jump on a rebounder if you're a child trying to learn something new. And so I clearly want to completely upgrade my beliefs, my paradigms, the way that I'm showing up in the world, who I'm being, right? So why wouldn't I watch positive prime sessions while I'm jumping on a rebounder? Now that'd be efficiency and effectiveness. And when I went to business school, efficiency and effectiveness was like, what you were striving for. And so the reality is I can confirm to you that the greatest shifts I've ever made over the last 5 to 10 years have been whilst I've been bouncing. And I might even repeat to myself and not have a positive prime session in front of me. I am rich and sexy. Do you know? I was actually catching up with someone not so long ago, and he said to me, you are the sexiest woman alive. And I'm thinking, you clearly need to have your glasses redone, because like that lens, that ain't telling the truth. Anyway, I'm laughing at myself because who bounces and says, I am sexy? Well, somebody who was feeling quite not sexy enough for one's spouse, right? So I don't really want everyone to hear that, but anyway, that's just all between us. The point is that rebounding is exceptional for your lymphatic system. So in and of and by itself, it's a very good investment, right? I would say for those of you, I know is Stephanie here for the Germans in the room. I quite like German engineering too. Anyway, this rebounder is a Bellicon. I should sell them, shouldn't I, and make some profit out of it? Now there's an idea. Anyway, this Bellicon, Bellicon, is actually German, and it has bungee cords. I don't know what else to call them. Do you call them bungee cords? Not springs. There's a whole heap of additional advantages in bungee cords. I'm pretty sure it's a whole heap more expensive too. Highly likely, because that's kind of in keeping with me. And also Tony Robbins. Maybe Tony Robbins made a profit. Maybe that's why he was promoting them at his, see, the cynic and the skeptic still sits there somewhere deep inside. No, because he actually cares about the people that he's coaching. He actually does, right? Deep in his heart, he really, really, really cares about people transforming. That's why he recommended a Bellicon rebounder. Alrighty, so we have been together now for 45 minutes. You've all been beautiful. Which sessions should I watch? They're supposed to only be 30 seconds or thereabout. Audrey's saying she likes to rebound. Good on you. I got mine off Facebook Marketplace, but it's not a Bellicon. You could go to Bellicon and get some Google images and upload those into your positive prime session and see how your other than consciousness helps you to manifest a Bellicon. Now there's an idea. Hey, alrighty. Thank you, Barrett. You're a sweetheart. Anything else? There are a few others. Okay, go, Patty. Sorry.
I'm just trying to keep up with the questions. So Sarah has one question that was asked a little bit ago about how to keep distractions at bay. As soon as you make a decision to do something, something else comes in the way. It could be a big thing or a small thing, but the distraction keeps you from staying on it. After you
know, that's awesome. Awesome. Often that's self-sabotage. Nod in the room if that is you as well. You make a big decision, you make a commitment, you make a plan, you want something to change, and then all of a sudden there are these distractions and your attention is fragmented, correct? Right? Number one tip. Actually, Jack Canfield also says this. It's worked for me. I hope it works for you. Take a tiny action immediately, like super immediately. Like let zero time and space intervene between and right? So like I'll go walking and I don't have my iPhone with me and I don't have a notepad with me and something happens and I think, I've got to email that person, I've got to phone that person, I've got to write that email, I've got to look that up, something happens. I may have a very disciplined set of actions that I've already decided upon. But inspiration comes, it's always more powerful and more important, always, otherwise the universe wouldn't be giving it to me. I take immediate action before the rest of my plans. Now, sometimes I get done that which is, oh gosh, see, we have to talk about the incubation effect. I am actually pretty famous for something called the incubation effect, right? So it's about divine timing. If you take an action right now, it's like hitting a ball across the tennis court, right? And so the equal and opposite reaction is actually responding. The sooner you take that action, the sooner somebody can return. The sooner that you actually hit the ball back across the court, the sooner somebody can actually hit it back. Are you with me? Right? So oftentimes inspiration that actually you receive is somehow the universe nudging you that something is going to have a greater effect. There's going to be a better impact. And so if you take action immediately, what you're actually saying to God and your angels and your guides and your ascended masters and all the other entities and essences that are around you and your higher self, and what you're saying to your own heart is, thank you, 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 thank you for such magnificent inspiration. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know what? I can be trusted with receiving those downloads because I take action immediately. Please send me some more. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for continuing to send me more inspiring ideas. Thank you, 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 thank you for giving me the nudge to connect with somebody. If you can do that as immediately as possible, things start to actually flow for you in an entirely different way. It's absolutely the truth. It's certainly what I've experienced. Incubation effect means take the tiniest action, even if it's ill-conceived. Take the action. It comes from divine inspiration. Take the action. Hit the ball across the court and allow the person, whoever the circumstance, situation, or people are that the universe is aligning for you, may not even ever have orchestrated for you before, back across the court. And now you're in play. It's so much easier for flow to happen, for productivity, for profitability, for prosperity. It's just so much easier when you're actually in play. You all know it's really hard sometimes to get yourself just to take the first step. Do it without, like, Mel Robbins is famous for this. Go have a look at some of Mel Robbins stuff. Google her 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing. I've been doing that for years. I take more action than most people before 9 a.m. That's the truth. Oh, and by the way, I still cook my beautiful spouse his lovely breakfast, and I somehow have the house clean, neat and tidy. And I turn up. I've at least got lipstick on, right? So a lot of it is about showing up as well. We can do a whole nother piece on that. Anything else? So Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, what she basically says is a lot of people will overanalyze. They will get paralyzed by that, paralysis analysis. And so, you dive yourself into some inspired action. Don't worry about whether it's the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do. The perfectionist in me, gosh, my father's a real perfectionist, right? So it's something I definitely had to deal with. The perfectionist in me has actually learned to hit the ball across the court. Sometimes my grammar isn't amazing. Sometimes actually there's some typos. Sometimes I haven't actually thought through what the hell happens when they hit the ball back across the court. That's why you need a Patty in your life and a Mayumi in your life. See, you find the solutions that are necessary. Isn't it true, Patty? You're like, Patty's like, what are you doing, Kim? Hitting the ball across the court. Let's go. Faster, right?
Occasionally. Yeah, I have to lob it back sometimes pretty quick.
Awesome. Alrighty. Okay, so does that help? I think that's more than enough for an hour. I thank you for all being so wonderful. Thank you, Angel, Anita, Audrey, Barrett, Carol, Deborah, Catherine, Fiona, Jackie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gosh, we're having someone join us right this minute second. And Anita, thank you for joining us. You'll have to watch the recording. Mimi will make it available. Thank you, Kim and Kim. Oh, there's lots of Kims. We're great, aren't we? Thank you, Linda and Lisa and Marnie and Sarah and Sarah and Sarah and Sarah and Sue. Woohoo! And Terry, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Alrighty, so as you can see, I'm feeling really... Lisa, did I write a paper on the incubation effect? No, but I should, shouldn't I? Yeah. Anita, you heard most of it. You did indeed. Anita, just know that I really appreciate what you've actually gifted us. It was gorgeous. Yes, you can do it again if that's going to make you feel more comfortable and more excited, whatever. Never enough is enough. No, of course, enough is more than enough. Absolutely up to you. Thank you, Laura. Pleasure. There is a witch session 1 and 2 and 3, I think. Has this been valuable? Because Mimi says, oh, Kim, do you want to do these ad hoc sessions once a month? And I go, yeah, sure, doll. It's fun. I get to, and as some of you may know right now, I don't have any problems with enough words. Some of those words could probably be said more succinctly. Now there's something I could work on. We actually, Patty, need to create a positive prime session for me to write short emails. There's a challenge. Yep. Alrighty. I love you all. Thank you very, very, very much. Continue to watch Positive Prime, a few more sessions, a few more times a day. Watch the miracles occur, the serendipity, the synchronicity, and the coincidence is there for you. We love you. You deserve it. You're worthy of it. So are we. And it's so much fun. Life is just more playful and lighthearted and easier and more simple. Stick with it, okay? Stick with it. Mwah. Oh, hang on 1 second. I watched my PP session on my vibration plate. Do you know that's brilliant, Kim? I've done that as well. Do you know my friend Chris? She has one of those vibration machines as well. I'm not sure that I could have it now with a pacemaker in. I'd have to actually check that. But anyway, yeah, the reality is, I cannot imagine that it isn't going to be really, really, really helpful. How do we compare it? Not sure. Not sure unless I did the experiment. But for those of you who have a vibration plate and a rebounder, could you do the experiments for us and let us know? Report back. Alrighty? Mwah. Lisa, I can see this message. The answer is yes, I'll have a look. Patty will have a look, and yes, I'll get back to you. Mwah.